After driving through the chaos that is Night City, you park your car and begin to walk its rather dark streets. On your search around the streets, you find a woman looking at the engine of her car. You speak to her.
Hey, Panam? So you're V. Where's my car?
Hello and welcome to Anatomy of Fiction. In today's video, we will be discussing Panam Palmer. More specifically, why did Panam leave her clan, the Aldecaldos? To do this, we will firstly need to go over several things, starting with who is Panam, so her clan and her background. After this, we will move on to discuss Panam's history, so her life until she meets V. Then we will move on to discuss the friends and foes of Panam. So let us begin with who is Panam Palmer. Panam Palmer was a member of the Aldecaldos Nomad clan. So nomads are groups of people who generations ago were low-level members of corporations that were fired and essentially rejected from employment elsewhere. With the expansion of corporations and their control, these people and their families would be driven out of their homes and pushed out of the cities. Now with this, these families would meet others in similar positions and form clans. The nomad clans are groups of several families of nomads that live together, travel together, and look after each other, working together with some members taking on various roles like leading the clan, teaching the clan, or looking after the clan. The nomad clans look out for their own members, forming strong bonds due to the difficulty of their lifestyle. Now the nomads, as the name suggests, are constantly on the road. They do not settle down and stay in one place for long. There are multiple of these nomad families, with one of these being the Aldecaldos. They are actually one of the largest nomad clans, made up of several families. Panam's family, specifically within the Aldecaldos, is the Bright family. Now what we know about this faction is that they were established spontaneously, this occurring in the early 2000s in Los Angeles. This group was established by Juan Aldecaldo. Now Juan was a rather interesting character, and how he established this faction is rather interesting. This establishment came through his famous speech to the media, this being a response to the death of his son. His son had died during a gang shootout. Juan also mourned the beginning of the collapse of the United States of America in this interview. Now, his interview and messages of sorrow and loss would touch thousands of people who had watched, many experiencing something similar to him. Now, during this continued collapse of the United States, Juan would lead a group from Los Angeles to Mexico City. This group would become known as the Aldecaldos. They would join other nomad groups in rebuilding Mexico City. But how would they end up back in California? Well, their return would be due to the death of their leader Juan Aldecaldo. The Aldecaldos desired to return to their hometown to bury him. This would lead to the Aldecaldos being led by the Santiago family for 3 generations. Now this is not who they are led by in the year 2077, we would see them led by Saul Bright. So Saul is who assumed leadership when the Aldecaldos were in a fragile state. He was idolized by Panam for his actions prior to taking over the clan. However, after a dispute, she chose to leave the clan and live independently, making her living as a mercenary. She would attempt to make her living in Night City by doing this mercenary work, heading to Afterlife to meet up with a fixer to set her up with this work. However, considering that Panam was allowed to freely come and go in the Aldecaldos camp, we do know that she was not cast out as a Rathan Shiv. The Rathan Shiv are people who have been kicked out of their nomad groups, normally for crimes against other members of the clan, grouping together in their own outcast clans like the Wraiths. Now, these groups are known to be particularly violent, ruthless, and unreliable, especially when it comes to fulfilling contracts. So, based on who Panam Palmer is, why did she leave her clan? Considering that Panam is able to freely come and go, we can see that the nature of her leaving the clan is not criminal, which would have led to her being declared a Rathan Shiv. Instead, it being a disagreement between her and the current head of the Aldecaldos, but this is only truly on the surface. As with Panam getting older and desiring to explore more, do more, and attempt to help the clan more, she would find her suggestions often being shot down. Considering that many of the older members of the clan still view Panam as a sort of younger sister, many of her ideas are viewed as rash, and she is often not taken very seriously by her peers. this leading to her desiring more freedom outside of the Aldecaldos. However, this is only one part of the story, not the full picture. To learn more, we should move on to Panam's story, her history. Panam Palmer was born in the year 2043, making her 33 when she meets V. Panam was raised as a member of the Aldecaldos. Now, when Panam was a child, her best friend would be taken by a Rathan Shiv. In most cases, knowing what the Rathan Shiv are like, this would spell disaster. However, thankfully, this would not be the case for Panam's friend. This being due to another member of the Aldecaldos, this being Cassidy Reiter. Now, Cassidy Reiter would manage to save Panam's best friend. However, this situation would affect them all so deeply that they would not speak of the situation to other members of the clan. This being done in order to try and forget about the traumatic event. Because of this event, Cassidy would become somewhat protective over Panam. Now, this would not be the only important event in Panam's past. This being with another of the friends of Panam, so Panam and Mitch would at some point work together. Doing so, they would haul cargo from San Francisco all the way to Kansas. Doing this for the owner of a sin meat farm. Panam and Mitch would eventually make their way to the sin meat farm. Here, the smell would make such an impression on Panam's nostrils, making her feel incredibly unwell, which would lead to her leaving an impression on the farmer. This impression being a puddle of vomit on his shoes. The owner, thankfully having some sense of humor, would tell Panam, "No need to bow, I'll just take a handshake." Now, Panam was also known for allegedly having the body of the deputy finance director of the Soviet car manufacturer Kaukaz in the trunk of her car at some point. But hey, everyone has a few skeletons in their trunk. Anyway, moving on. Panam would eventually leave the camp of her fellow Aldecaldos and set up her own in the Badlands just outside of Night City. With her physical separation from her nomad family, she would still keep in contact, joking with her friend Scorpion about leaving California and heading off on the Oregon Trail, bringing their other friend Mitch along on their journey and starting something of their own as a group. However, this would not occur. With the conflict between Panam and Saul coming to a head, Panam would choose to take a leap and move to Night City and try her luck as a mercenary. This being even with Mitch attempting to convince her to stay in the Badlands and stay with the Aldecaldos. Panam would eventually find work at Afterlife. This being through a fixer named Rogue. Rogue would often pair Panam up with another nomad called Nash. However, there would be an issue with this pairing. This being due to Nash being a member of the Wraiths, one of the groups of Rathan Shivs. Now, on one of these assignments to deliver merchandise, Panam would be betrayed by Nash. He would steal the merchandise and her car. This would lead to Panam confronting Rogue at Afterlife, due to not being told about who Nash truly was and his betrayal, but also Rogue refusing to compensate Panam. Panam would be angry at Rogue as Rogue would refuse to help Panam recover the stolen items. So based on Panam's history, why did Panam choose to leave the Aldecaldos? Well, we can see from the various jobs she has had that Panam has always been rather rebellious and adventurous in nature. Pairing this with her slightly more idealistic nature, she believes that she can make her own way in the world without the help of others, even in a city as competitive as Night City. Panam also does not see the serious issues that her clan had been facing to lead to the issues surrounding her and Saul fighting. Panam has a much more optimistic outlook for the clan, desiring them to stay independent, while Saul is much more pessimistic, considering that he inherited the leadership whilst the clan was in a poor state, leading to his strictness and his desire to work with corporations. So Panam's desire to leave based on this comes from her being historically adventurous and rebellious, but also continuously feeling unheard by her family. But this is only one piece of the puzzle, not the entire picture. To learn more, we should discuss the friends and foes of Panam Palmer. When it comes to the friends and foes of Panam Palmer, there are several we should discuss. For this, we should start with her friends. So Panam has had several important friendships, the first of these being with Mitch Anderson. Mitch, like Panam, was a member of the Aldecaldos, becoming good friends with her after his return from the Unification War. Mitch fought in this war on the side of the Free States, working as a Panzer Boy. The Panzer Boys in this case was an elite division of combat AV and armoured vehicles. During his time working as a Panzer Boy, Mitch was forced to take various drug cocktails. This being done so that he and the other Panzer Boys could keep their synapses strong and continue to pilot the tanks. However, this would come at the risk of cyberpsychosis. This being why Mitch is able to pilot the Basilisk alone. After the war, Mitch returned to the Aldecaldos. However, he would struggle with PTSD. He would help the Aldecaldos out with the the various smuggling operations as part of his work, becoming good friends with Panam along with becoming one of the most respected members of the Bright family. Panam greatly respected Mitch, trusting his opinions and even relying on him in tough times. Panam would seek out Mitch for assistance in times where she felt she could not do it on her own, even after leaving the clan, this being when she was screwed over by Nash and Rogue refused to help, even if Mitch was not allowed to directly help due to the decisions of the clan leadership. So she thought highly of him, believing that he would be able to fix issues that she was unable to fix on her own. Now, Mitch was not the only member of the Aldecaldos to fight in the reunification war. We would also see another of Panam's friends, Driss Mariana, better known as Scorpion, fight in the war. Like Mitch, Scorpion was drafted from the Aldecaldos to fight on the side of the Free States. He was also fitted with top-of-the-line combat implants and given drug cocktails to improve his fighting ability as a Panzer boy. These medications, of course known to cause cyberpsychosis. Now, like Mitch, Scorpion was also marked by his time as a soldier in the war. He was not known to speak out about it, however, he was known to scream out in his sleep due to the nightmares he was left with. Scorpion would come away from the war having met many new people and with many new ideas. However, like Panam's ideas, he would find his ideas not welcome. Scorpion, on his return, had attempted to convince Saul to get their nomad family to join Snake Nation, which, as we know, Saul was not pleased with this. Saul would punish Scorpion for this, refusing to give him any assignments for a year. Scorpion would devote himself to the clan during his life, this being through his various activities that would help keep the clan running, like his participation in smuggling operations and his maintenance of the various machinery in the clan. Like with Mitch, Scorpion was highly respected by Panam. Scorpion was someone who Panam sought out in her attempts to leave the clan, like with their joking about heading out to Oregon. Scorpion is also someone who Panam relied on in times of trouble, as she also attempted to gain his help with her losing her cargo after she was betrayed by Nash, even though, like Mitch, Scorpion did not due to his obligations with the clan. So, like Mitch, Panam viewed Scorpion as someone she could rely on in difficult times, and as a friend when she was struggling with the clan dynamics. Another of the important friends that Panam has had within the Aldecaldos is Cassidy Reiter. So Cassidy is an older member of the Aldecaldos who has previously saved Panam's friend from the Rathan Shiv when Panam was a child. Because of this, Cassidy is rather protective of Panam. We see this with a text that Cassidy sends V if V happens to be a male, essentially threatening V if V hurts Panam. So Cassidy is much like an older relative to Panam, attempting to protect her from the dangers of the world and heartbreak. When it comes to the relationships that Panam has, there are also some rather complex ones, like her relationship with Saul. Panam in the beginning looked up to Saul, idolizing him for his behavior when she was younger, this being various things like his moving of civilians across borders during the bombardment, or his hijacking of a petrochem tanker and using it to set the desert ablaze to entertain the children. However, with Saul assuming leadership of the clan whilst it was in a difficult spot, his behaviour would change. With this, he would become stricter and would be unwilling to work with Panam or her suggestions, this being due to just how unstable the Aldecaldos' position had become. Panam disliked the idea of the Aldecaldos essentially being the Corpo's goons, cleaning up the messes that Biotechnica had made. Saul, however, believed that it was the safest path forward for the Aldecaldos, shooting down the ideas of anyone who disagreed, like Scorpion with his plan to join Snake Nation, and of course Panam suggesting that the Aldecaldos stay independent. Now, the relationship between Panam and Saul would be a complicated one. However, when Saul's life would be at risk due to him being taken by the Wraiths, Panam would be the first to step up and attempt to save him, even desiring to bring in a mercenary that Panam had previously met to assist with the rescue mission. If Saul was successfully rescued, we see Panam being promoted to co-leader of the clan. So when it comes to Saul and his relationship with Panam, he is a sort of father figure to Panam, with them being rather close in the beginning and having their own issues in her struggle for freedom and finding her place in the clan. Panam would also have people who she would end up seeing as a sort of enemy. The first of these being Rogue. Now, Rogue has had a long and complicated history before coming into Panam's life, her past being what would essentially lead to them connecting. So Rogue was a rebellious teenager, however the gang life did not suit her, so instead she would become a solo. this being a mercenary taking on jobs throughout Night City. She would actually start a relationship with Johnny Silverhand. However, this relationship would come to an end in the early part of 2011, when Rogue would find out that Johnny wasn't the most faithful. Between the years 2013 and 2023, Rogue was known to be one of the best mercenaries at the time. Interestingly enough, during this time is when Rogue would meet Nomad Santiago, who Rogue would often work together with as a mercenary, which would eventually lead to these two working with Johnny Silverhand when he went toe-to-toe with Arasaka in 2013. This would lead to all who had taken on the Arasaka Corporation participating in this operation going into hiding, spending their time over at the Aldecaldos camp. This specific camp was over in Mexico. Now, Rogue would return to Night City, going back to her mercenary work. However, at some point between 2023 and 2045, she would end up in a car accident. Now, this car accident was so severe that even with the cyberware that was installed, many of the internal injuries and damage could not be fixed. This would lead to Rogue retiring as a mercenary, however, not leaving the industry completely. This is where she would start operating as a fixer, essentially the middleman between the local mercenaries and those looking to hire them to make their problems go away. Rogue would set up shop in Afterlife, which at this time was in downtown Night City. She would eventually relocate the bar to Watson, a suburb in Night City, and continue her operations as a fixer there. Now, due to her reputation as being one of the best mercenaries, she would not have much of an issue setting up shop, and her influence would continue into the year 2077. We see this with her being known in part as the Queen of the Afterlife, being considered the top fixer in Night City, hiring the best of the best to fulfill various contracts. This top fixer position is where Panam would come in. After Panam had left her clan to work in Night City, she would meet Rogue, asking her for work. Here she would be paired with another nomad, this being Nash, for a few gigs. The next assignment that they were sent on was supposedly simple, this being to just deliver some merchandise to the 6th Street gang. However, this job would not go so well, this being due to Nash not being just a regular nomad, instead being a Rathan Shiv, one of the nomads who had been kicked out of their clan. Now, the Rathan Shiv are not exactly well known for fulfilling contracts, this being proven with Nash stealing both the cargo and Panam's car. Now, considering that Rogue made the decision to pair Nash and Panam up, Panam thought that Rogue would at least provide some assistance with this little predicament. However, Rogue would refuse to directly assist and refuse to even pay Panam. Panam would eventually manage to recover things. However, Rogue would not exactly view this as an achievement, further fanning the flames of hatred in Panam. So Rogue would unknowingly set up Panam with an unreliable accomplice, then refuse to assist her when things would eventually come to a head, instead blaming Panam for when the problems had arisen. Now, speaking about the other problem in this partnership, we should discuss Nash, the other enemy of Panam. Now, Nash was a Rathan Shiv, being part of the Wraiths specifically. When it comes to why Nash is a Rathan Shiv, this is not something explicitly stated. However, when it comes to the reasons why one can become a Rathan Shiv, it is not just waking up on the wrong side of the bed or burning someone's toast. No, it is heinous crimes like murder, considering that the Wraiths are known to be rather violent to both outsiders and their own. An example of this being their leader Dog Killer, being rumoured to wear clothing that was made of human skin. Whatever Nash did, Nash being kicked out of his original Nomad clan was likely justified. With this, Nash and the Wraiths in this part of the Badlands primarily participated in theft, murder, and chrome smuggling as their form of business. Got to make money somehow. We see this with Nash moving merchandise for Rogue, but then stealing it along with the theft of Panam's car, which they plan to use to pay off their debt. Now, with Nash betraying Panam and even Rogue, Nash's true colours would be revealed. He would be shown to be untrustworthy and only caring about what benefited himself. So based on Panam's friends and foes, why did Panam choose to leave the Aldecaldos? Well, Panam has many complex relationships, both inside and outside of the clan. We see this especially with her relationship with Saul, who is a sort of father figure to Panam. Because of Saul's strictness and pessimism, Panam struggles to find her place in the clan as an adult. with Saul shooting her down when she tries to keep the clan free from corpo influence, making her feel frustrated and unheard. Because of her more optimistic nature and the somewhat sheltered life she has led as a nomad, Panam believes that life in Night City and going out on her own is the only option for her, basing her sort of view on Night City and the people there on her upbringing where everyone looked out for one another. This would lead to her approaching Night City rather naively, believing that she could easily work things out on her own and that people would treat her with the same kindness and respect that the Aldecaldos had. So based on who Panam is, her history, and her friends and foes, we can finally answer the question, why did Panam leave her clan, the Aldecaldos? With Panam being a member of the Aldecaldos, throughout her life she experienced a much more tight-knit community than that of Night City. Being raised in the nomad communities, she was raised under the belief that the people you surround yourself with are your family. Whether there is a blood relationship or not, these people have your back and you have theirs. Now this sort of community for her was a double-edged sword, as Panam could not be herself in the sense that her beliefs in how to make the clan better were silenced, and that her need for adventure and freedom were more suppressed by the needs of the clan, along with the issue that it made Panam more naive and trusting of others, believing that they had her best interests in heart, especially those who had a similar background like Nash, along with having strong trust in those who she worked for, as Rogue filled in a sort of elder position when she had left the Nomads for Night City, giving Panam a false sense of safety and support. So with Panam leaving the Aldecaldos after her argument with Saul over working with Biotechnica, this was the final straw. However, the situation had been slowly boiling away for years. Panam desired freedom and adventure because of her rebellious spirit, but due to her sheltered life and upbringing, she had a sort of belief that nothing could go wrong. People in Night City were just as trustworthy as those in the Aldecaldos camp, not seeing the horrors of the world like her friends Mitch and Scorpion. Panam knew that if she truly needed, she could come back, as unlike the Raph and Shiv, her goodbye was only temporary. It was just a cooling off of her temper and Saul's. If Panam truly desired to leave the Aldecaldos, she would have cut contact with her friends. Instead, she desired the freedom she was never truly given under the supervision of Saul. So let me know in the comments what you would like to see about Cyberpunk next. A special thank you to all of our lore archaeologist supporters, you guys help keep this channel running. And thank you to anyone who is joining our memberships. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, then you should check out this one. YouTube thinks you will like it. Otherwise, there's at least 48 others to check out. Watch them all. Just do it. The tab's open.